Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of The Blind Ambition. It's your friend Rick from Blind, and today we have a special episode for you all. We're going to introduce you to Christopher Garzon, who's the founder and CEO of Data Engineer Academy. Christopher has spent nearly a decade in the data profession, including as a data engineer at Amazon, Lyft, and different startups. Data Engineer Academy was created by big tech data engineers with decades of experience hiring, managing, and training data engineers at companies like Amazon, Google, Meta, and more. They also provide personal guidance, resume reviews, and help negotiate job offers. Christopher, I'm really excited to have you on the show. I think a lot of folks are going to be super into what you're going to have to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. And
A lot of folks aren't knowledgeable about what data engineering is as a career. You've obviously been a data engineer yourself. Can you
yeah,
walk us through your career and how you got into that role?
I'll try not to go to Book of Genesis, but long story short, my first job was at Amazon as a data analyst, and I eventually became a data engineer at Amazon, at a startup, and at Lyft. But I'll go even further for a second. Almost a decade ago in college, I used to sneak into graduate level machine learning classes because I was like, this data stuff is cool. I want to go into this data world. But then I looked into the courses in college, there was nothing. And I remember being like, okay, well, let me do some research. Found this thing called machine learning, which a decade ago, I don't know if you remember, but I would talk to friends and they would be like, hey, I was just looking up this Visine eye drop on Amazon. And then I started getting fed ads on Google. That is the craziest coincidence. And I'm like, probably not. So I always thought that was really cool. I remember just kind of as a funny side note, I remember talking to this girl and she was like, hey, what class are you going to? I'm going to my machine learning class. And she was like, what the fuck is that? And I was like, oh, I lost my chance at that girl. So anyway, as a side note, I've been in the data space, data nerd for a decade, data analyst at Amazon, data engineer, startups, angel investor, eventually a data engineer at Lyft. And we founded this company.
What does a data analyst at Amazon do? You hinted at it in terms of getting the right products in front of the right people and making sure you're able to convert following folks around the internet as they browse.
Yeah.
Is there more to it than that?
A data analyst is somebody who analyzes the data for the business purpose, right? So Amazon wants to know, hey, what is the best, product around this month, right? So they analyze the data, they use SQL code, they come up with dashboards, right? Track some metrics, track some data. It's a little different than data engineer, for example. I love it because data is very much psychology. It tells you something about the user when you dig into the data, you write the code, right? Do all that stuff to really learn something about your users. Because data engineering builds the infrastructure, right? The wires, the pipelines. Like if you think about a house, the wiring, the electricity, all of that is built underground. Data analysts just come in and they do the analysis on top of that data, kind of like a decorator might decorate a house. Data engineers put
Okay.
irons in the pipes underneath the house. Data analytics, they measure the widths of the house of the rooms, and then data scientists come in and sexy it up. They're the ones doing more complicated machine learning algorithms. Data engineering is so crucial nowadays, especially with AI, is because the infrastructure still needs to be built for AI to come on top of it and do what it has to do, right? Building in the cloud, building ETL pipelines, using Python, SQL, all that good stuff, DBT to build scalable infrastructure is really what needs to happen. And it's what's been happening to allow AI to take off. It's crazy nowadays because AI is really going to change how every position does their thing. And I think it's going to impact data science the hardest. We see a lot of people like, oh, I want to get into data science. I think data scientists are in trouble a lot more than data engineers. Sticking with the house analogy, don't ask me why, but I went down a rabbit hole one time about how cranes worked. We used to be able to take a brick and build that house. Over time, as cranes came into the picture, they started to automate that process. And the crazy thing is that cranes actually build themselves. So the way a crane gets bigger to build a building is it actually uses another crane to build on top of its own crane to get bigger. That to me is like AI. AI is just going to use itself, use the data to get smarter, get bigger, and be more efficient. Here's where data engineering comes in. Even though cranes came into the picture, the architect still has a job. Think about that. The
Sure.
architect still has a job no matter how many cranes, no matter how many innovation. The data engineers are the architects because AI can't automate coordination. Does that make sense? A data engineer, again, they build the infrastructure. The reason I say that is because it's actually how I started the company I have now, which was I understand the pain point that those customers went through. They might be in tech, they might be a data analyst, but they feel stuck at their current role. Maybe they don't have the right team, the right mentors to teach them. They don't have the opportunities. They're not at a company that values data engineering or just data in general, right?
In terms of AI, there's only so much of a corpus out there in terms of text or images
Right.
that these large language models or these, underlying models can build to create those user interfaces that we end up calling AI apps or AI software, right? Eventually there gets to this point where it really does learn about itself, and the term synthetic data comes up, where it's not the original human created text or images or whatever that might be. The crane, it seems analogous.
Well,
Now,
the crazy part about it is that every time you write something into ChatGPT, think about it, more data is getting created. And so
right,
look at a chart of data, the growth of data, it's hockey sticking, right? Every time you think it's about to plateau, it grows exponentially. I think the human mind, again, me being into psychology, the human mind is not good at comprehending what exponential looks like. I'll give you an example. Warren Buffett is worth $100 billion. 50 billion came from the last like 10 to 20 years. He's about to be 99 years old.
right.
The compound effect is massive. So the growth that data is going to enable is cuts. So the reason I like that whole machine learning story from back when I was in college is because Jeff Bezos was doing machine learning 25 years ago. There's a video of him literally saying, Tom bought this book and we're going to recommend these books based off other users purchasing similar books. That's machine learning algorithm, right? Like that's already been out there. What's crazy is the ability to do it at scale with this much data. That's never been able to be done before. And data engineering enables all of that. That's why we're seeing software engineers go crazy. Like, hey, how do I future proof my career and going into data engineering?
For folks that want to get in on that opportunity, they want to be the architects of this new economy, this new tech world where data, AI clearly go hand in hand.
Right.
Are there certain kind of disciplines or field specialties, domain experience that lend itself particularly well to translate into that data engineer role? You went from data analyst to data engineering.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're very numerically literate, obviously have that desire and interest to work in data. Was
Yeah.
it then easy to kind of bolt on that engineering? Walk me through all those like different career paths that might lead into data engineering.
Funny enough, I was a math and economics major. So, contrary to belief, you could still break into tech even if you don't have a tech background. Even if you are in tech right now, like if you're a software engineer, you have that half of the brain to pick up the things you need in order to become a data engineer, a cloud engineer, a solutions architect. The five things we really try to emphasize is SQL, Python, system design, cloud, and data modeling. If you understand those five concepts and you're able to say, here's how we build the infrastructure. Here's how we build the infrastructure with code. Here's how we build the infrastructure with code in the cloud so that we can scale. And that's a really, really good way for you to learn how to become a data engineer, a cloud engineer, a solutions architect. Now, once you become one of those things, that's when you start working with the data scientists, the machine learning engineers, and the AI engineers, because whatever they need, what kind of data they need to be fed into their models, that's where you work directly with them to give them that give them that data, give them that input. If you're already in tech, you can easily pick up these skills that I already described because chances are you've already been doing 20-30% of it your whole career. You just now need to specialize. Like if you know Java, for example, you can probably learn Python in like a couple weeks, if not a month, right? It's a very interesting thing because it reminds me of what one of my mentors always said. The most adaptable win. If you're a software engineer, you're probably going to adapt and learn something related to data. If not, maybe your days are numbered, maybe not.
Just from talking to you, it seems very obvious that you have such a passion for, in terms of data. You were working at one of the largest companies in the world, Amazon, working in data, first as an analyst, then as an engineer.
Yeah.
Obviously, you don't work there anymore. Why did you give up that cush, big
Yeah.
tech
Dude,
job?
I love business. I love entrepreneurship. I love the chaos. I absolutely love it. I'll talk to prospects sometimes and they'll ask that in a very how do I say it? Skeptical kind of manner. It's like, well, why are you really doing this? I don't think corporate America is for everybody, but for me specifically, I love entrepreneurship and I like creating. I'll give you another anecdote. My business mentor, he told me that his company runs 365 experiments a month. Like
Wow.
that's what I had to go figure out. And now I think I still
Right.
Excel sheet where I started doing experiments with my company. I started this 2 weeks ago and I'm at 50. And I'm like, okay, so if I kept up at this pace, and trust me, I'm tired, I would hit 100 this month. And he runs 365. So I'm like, holy shit. Like, and so here's the secret. That's what the best companies do. The best companies never stop running experiments. When I worked at Amazon, my team alone ran 20 experiments. I don't know how many teams Amazon had, but I'm sure they're running 20,000 experiments at one time. I find more joy in it, in starting a company, being able to be chaotic, being able to lead, being able to work with people you like. The other reason I left, to be honest, is because I was just on Reddit giving advice for free. And then people started asking me to mentor them. And then they started paying me. And it started over 2, 3 years ago. And I realized there's a business. I had a problem that now these people have. So why not just jump in?
Wow. So it seemed to start off organically out of the kindness of your own heart, giving back to the community, paying
Yeah.
it forward on Reddit. How did you start to systematize it? Where did the business building come up? Was it just the next day you realized these things clicked and that became Data Engineering Academy? Or what were the intermediary steps to your founding story then?
It was just one day at a time. That one day, somebody reached out to me. Then I started mentoring them. Then somebody else did it. Then somebody else was like, hey, I'll pay you. Then all of a sudden, this happened. Then I clicked on an ad, was like, hey, do you want to learn how to do X or do you want to learn this too? And I was like, well, I like business. So I'll learn those things for fun. And then I started to implement those things in my business. And next thing you know, I'm a little tired. I need to hire somebody. I just started building. I was working part time when I started it. And so I couldn't even advertise. I couldn't put it on my LinkedIn profile. I couldn't start an Instagram and advertise it because I didn't want to get in trouble. The reason I bring this up is because I think there's this lie in tech, in Silicon Valley, in business, where it's like you have this eureka moment. Where like one day I was in my dorm and I just knew it. I knew I had $1 billion business. I don't know. I just went little by little. I experimented, did a mini experiment here, mini experiment there, mini experiment there. Bunch of things failed. One thing worked, and I just kept going. I remember data engineering Reddit thread. It was like 20,000 people in it. I looked the other day and I think it's like 250,000. That's a
Wow.
10x growth in 2.5 years. And the craziest part is if you look at the data science one, that's 2.5 million people. So I think we're just getting started. Data science is still growing, and I think data engineering can outpace it. And this is when I went down the whole rabbit hole and I started talking to businesses as well. And I realized, oh, they also have a problem. Because we hear students and clients all the time, oh, I don't know if I can get a job. I can't get an interview. And then we talk to businesses and they're like, we can't find people that have the skill set. Oh, interesting. I'm hearing two very interesting things from both sides.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe the solution is education.
When you connected the dots and you saw that mismatch, obviously that led you to start your company. How did you start building the curriculum in terms of what skills that people are actually going to learn? Can you walk us through what it's like to get
Yeah.
started with Data Engineering Academy?
The five biggest things that you see in the interview is going to be SQL, Python, system design, data modeling, cloud, and behavioral questions. Those are the interview rounds, soft skill rounds that you're going to get. I remember seeing a Reddit thread that was like, hey, you need to go do these certificates, these courses online, spend the next 2 years doing all these 20 projects. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I was hiring both at Amazon and Lyft, right? None of those things are on the interview. This is why when somebody asks me, like, can I really do this? I'm like, trust me, you can do this because your competition is doing 2 years worth of certificates. They're wasting their time. I get it. Maybe they're doing it because it's the cheapest route or the easiest, less imposter syndrome route. Uh, but time is also very valuable. When I see people wasting 1, 2, 3 years doing those certificates, it has nothing to do with the interview. Because at the end of the day, how do you get a job? You get your resume out there, you get an interview, you pass the interview. It's really that simple. That's really how the curriculum started. I know what's on the interview. I'm going to create a curriculum based on it. Let's go. Now, it's evolved because, again, I only have like a decade of experience. There's other data engineers out there that have 15, 20, 25. They're way better than me, right? I have no problem admitting that. But what I've done is I've gone out and hired them. I've been lucky enough to get some of the smartest people in the world, not just in the US, to help me mentor the students and build out a more robust curriculum. Things like DBT, Spark, Kafka, dashboarding, data quality, how to actually make sure that we're monitoring the data and making sure that the data that we're feeding into these ML models are actually accurate, right? And on time. It's about being able to have the confidence that when you do show up to an interview, you're like, hey, I know what I'm talking about. And that's what we're training our students to do, not just get a certificate because you watched 10 videos of something, right? Does that help?
It does because I think there is a tendency for folks that are moving careers, moving professions to want to over credentialize, right? Where they say more certificates or more education is better. You're kind of padding your resume or being extra safe, right? You're planning extra hard. Beyond that, are there other reasons why you think folks online or out there giving advice might be getting it wrong in terms of telling folks to train or study the wrong things?
I don't think it's malicious, but I actually here are the common patterns
Certainly
that
not.
I see, the insights that I've seen that are really interesting. Some of the advice that people are giving is coming from, let's say, somewhere in India. And the thing is, the interview process in India is different than the interview process in the US. Or even if you're applying for a job at Netflix in Europe versus in the US, different interview process, different compensation bands. You get paid 5 times more in the US than if you were to get a job for the same title in Europe, right? Like Europe, there's just less demand. So you have to be careful who you listen to. People are giving advice on Reddit based on anecdotes. Hey, like this is the answer because this is what I went through. And it's like, well, hold on. You also applied to a mid-sized company in the Midwest, right? Maybe that one company you applied for and got a job at has its own unique interview process. What we're trying to do is
Right.
say, listen, the curriculum we're giving to you is 80/20, meaning our curriculum, only 20% of the things you need to study will account for 80% of the interviews out there. Look, we're going to prep you. Does that mean we're going to cover everything to the point where if you go to apply to some obscure startup, you won't, catch a weird question that we've never seen before? No, right? Like it's possible that you might run into a question that no one's ever seen before. But for the majority, the big tech companies interview process is pretty predictable. And anybody who's been a hiring manager or an interviewer will tell you, yeah, these are the 5 rounds, these are the questions, this is how you should prep. And at the end of the day, that's all a coach or a mentor really does is they just take knowledge, cut it, and help you get there 90% faster. And don't get me started on colleges and MBAs and all that, because that one's even worse than the Coursera route, in my opinion.
I appreciate that opinionated advice in terms of how to steer folks in the right direction. The founding story of Data Engineering Academy. Can you share with us folks that have like been through the program and what the results that they've been able to accomplish?
Our program is self-paced and personalized, not self-paced in that you do it alone, but self-paced in that you really dictate how much effort and time you can put into it. We attract a lot of people that are like, hey, I want to move at the speed of light. It's like, great. We designed this so that it's entirely based on your input, right? Your effort. We're going to be available 24/7. Literally, we give you access to a Slack. You have access to 10 coaches 24/7. And then we have group calls, one on ones. The idea is that we understand people have different circumstances. We understand that someone might want to do this full time. Someone else might only do this on the weekends. Somebody else has a year. Somebody else wants a job in 2 months, whatever the case is. We've had one person who stands out. He went from a non-tech background to a tech background in about 6 months. He's one of my favorite stories because we still work together. He also now helping me develop some content. We were catching up once and he was like, Chris, I'm on this team with like one or two other data engineers. And they're like, how did you learn this stuff? You know more than us. And these are data engineers with like 7, 8 years experience. And this guy who we helped has technically zero and is already one of the better data engineers at his company because we've been able to teach him things Lyft and Amazon were doing, things that are very up to date. And that guy got first tech job, I think 140 grand total comp. And it's just going to go higher from there, right? Because I know he's still working with us to get to big tech and probably make 250 just a year after. And
Yeah, is there a typical profile of folks that join Data Engineering Academy? Is it folks like that gentleman where they're looking to get into tech for the first time? They might not necessarily have engineering or coding background previously, but they're able to obviously gain all of those skills through the program and then clearly land their first role? Or
yeah,
is it folks that are kind of adjacent where they're already in tech already? Maybe they're a software engineer, maybe they're in another technical role, and they're just saying, hey, data engineering is really hot, and I want to flip the switch there.
that's exactly why we built the program the way we did. We made it personalized and customizable. The first thing we do is actually create your curriculum, right? So most
Huh.
boot camps these days say like, hey, this is the curriculum, one size fits all, good luck. We're saying like, no, we're actually going to mentor you and design it according to who you are. So to answer your question, right, we get the person who's breaking into tech for the first time. We get the person who's a data analyst that's like, okay, I want to get upgraded. I want to get promoted. I want to leave my company. Let me go become a data engineer. We get the software engineers, right? The people who are like, hey, like I need to future proof my career because I know data's.
Right.
I don't know if you saw the other day, Andy Jassy, the CEO of Amazon, said that they ran like a mini experiment with AI and it cut days worth of developer time in a few hours, pointed to like 250 million in savings. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, God, that was a mini experiment. They're probably looking to scale that and probably save
Right.
million very, very soon. Software engineers, you guys got to start thinking because they're going to show what's capable, and then all the rest of the companies are going to follow. And it's mind blowing because like 90% of the code that the AI wrote was accurate. So it's not even like they need a lot of engineers to code review this. The AI is pretty spot on, and it's just going to get better. And
I think there's a lot of opportunity. Christopher, before the show, I was looking through our own total compensation benchmarking tool on Blind,
yeah,
and the average salary of a data engineer in the US, just the salary, not the stock, not the bonus,
yeah,
is between $104,727 and $175,000 and 175,461.
yeah.
In counting total compensation, things like stock and bonus, data engineers can earn as much as $258,634. So there's a lot of opportunity. This is what you can earn. And like you said, this entire time, it is really future proof, right? Because everyone's going to need architects, right? We're still going to have houses no matter how advanced the technology gets. We're still going to need those people to
Right.
really like tell everyone else how to build it, how to set it up, all those systems. In the world of tech, it seems like data engineering is that discipline, is that function.
You have to ask yourself what is going to happen when the amount of data grows like this. Well, chances are Amazon, they're still going to hire software engineers. But if you're coming out of college right now, they're probably not looking to hire you because Amazon's already have software engineers. They can use AI to do it faster. What's going to happen is the data that comes out of that AI usage and the data that comes out of what the software engineers have built. Now the question is, what do we do with that data? 90% of data is unstructured, meaning not usable, not clean, not formatted. So 90%, most of the data is still unutilized. So when people say like ChatGPT is crazy, blah, blah, I'm like, we're just getting started. I would start thinking about how to future proof your career. Again, it's not as dramatic as social media makes it seem, but it's not coming either, right? So you have to find a middle ground, start thinking ahead. And those compensation numbers, super, super interesting. The one thing I'll say about those numbers, uh, you have to also row in the right boat. I have a friend making about $1 million a year right now working for NVIDIA. And it's because obviously NVIDIA stock has gone like this, right? It's hockey sticked upwards. A lot of the people we help are working at companies where they don't have stock. They don't get signing bonuses. They might have some skills, but they're like, well, how do I actually get to that next level in my career, in my compensation, in my pay? It's something to think about. It's not just the big tech engineers that are going to be looking at the space. It's going to be a lot more people. We have the data. We get over 10,000 apps per month. We know people are interested and they're coming.
Now, is there a selection process in terms of how many folks you can onboard? Because obviously, you've mentioned the program is very personalized, right? Even everything from the curriculum to obviously the advice, the resume reviews, the negotiation help, and the job offers and the job interview process. You're doing a lot of hand holding there.
Yeah.
10,000 applications, that's a lot. What does that look like in terms of how I can get started with the program?
We do a lot of filtering before they even speak to somebody. Then they have to speak to somebody, and then they have to speak to somebody else. After they enter the program, we actually evaluate them without them knowing, like, hey, was this a good fit? I'm very transparent. A lot of people are like, I don't know if I want to get on this call. Is a sales call? Trust me, it's not a sales call. It's the inverse. We're evaluating whether we think you're a good fit for this program because they're not going to succeed if they don't have the right mindset. Right. Again, we've helped people without any tech backgrounds. We've helped people with tech backgrounds. That almost doesn't make a difference. What makes a difference is whether they're here to learn, whether they can actually show up to the group calls, whether they can be responsive and take ownership. And, we have the data to know what works and what doesn't. So we find the best clients that we really think that we can be successful. It doesn't make sense to try to take everybody because it is a very one-on-one personalized white glove type service.
It makes sense because it sounds like Data Engineering Academy is not your traditional online course where you're just watching different videos. There seems to be an emphasis on more practical application, very hands on learning. and
Yeah.
obviously very pragmatic, right? The goal should be to land you a job in data engineering pretty close to when you complete the program, I imagine.
Yep, exactly, exactly. So what happens is that at some point we start to apply for you. So we even give you that service. We hear it from all the time. Our clients say, applying for a job is a full-time job. We know, so let us take that off your hands. I think what people want is education that actually gets them an outcome, not a master's in computer science or whatever. 2 years, 40, 50 grand, no guarantee you're going to get a job. It doesn't make sense.
Or right now, programs like Data Engineer Academy, these are the actual tool you're going to be using in your day-to-day job
Right.
rather than wait to be onboarded, wait till after the interview. Let's actually just show you how to use them right away, the
Yeah.
best practices as they're being used right now by the top companies.
Yep. Yep. And
Obviously, build the framework around and get you started there.
by the way, we've talked to colleges. Most of them don't have data engineering programs because most of the teachers weren't actually working at big tech companies.
Got it. Are there any other things that folks should know about Data Engineer Academy or the data engineering profession as a whole?
Big tech companies are actually the easiest to get into. They have the biggest budgets, they have the most job openings, and they have the mass amounts of data. They can't find people that know what they're doing.
I appreciate that walkthrough of what data engineering is like and the work that you all are doing at Data Engineer Academy.
Right.
This episode was brought to you by Christopher and Data Engineer Academy. Thanks for
Oh,
listening, everybody.
cheers, man. Well, thank you for having me.
That's it for The Blind Ambition. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a 5-star rating and a review. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.